ISIS is something that we will likely be talking about for a long time to come. So we want to welcome in Dr. Alan Kuperman with the UT LBJ School of Public Affairs. He's helping guide us here through this very complicated issue that a lot of us really may not understand and want to. First off, I just want to say you study global policy issues, ethnic conflict, and U.S. military intervention, so are quite well versed on this topic. First off, I mean, I think a lot of us still don't understand, how did this happen? How did we get into and I don't know if I can call it a war with ISIS?
Well, ISIS emerged really when the U.S. decided to withdraw troops from Iraq in 2011. And this was a decision that George W. Bush had initially made to withdraw the troops, but people in the U.S. were hoping that we could leave some troops there to ensure stability in Iraq, which really was quite stable after the surge that we had done a few years earlier. President Obama failed to negotiate a status of forces that would allow us to leave troops. He pulled all of our troops out of there. And then Iraq fell into ethnic struggle or sectarian struggle between the Shiite government and the Sunni minority, and in that conflict ISIS arose to defend the Sunni minority. So it was our withdrawal from Iraq that allowed ISIS to grow. Then it spread into Syria, and then we also, unfortunately, our government facilitated that too. There was instability in Syria, and we said that the head of Syria, Mr. Assad, had to step down and leave. And then instability flourished, and ISIS loves instability. And it flourished in Syria. And then we did a third mistake in 2011. We decided to lead a NATO intervention in Libya to overthrow that government. That government was against terrorists. But when we overthrew the government, we created a civil war there, and once again, ISIS stepped into that breach, into that vacuum, and grew. So we are largely responsible for the growth of ISIS in the three countries where it's strong today.
Three countries where it's strong today. Just kind of go over with me again. Which are those three countries?
That's Iraq, Syria, and Libya.
Okay.
Those are the three bases for ISIS.
You talk about Syria, and I think that's top of mind for a lot of our viewers because that is what has been in the news. We have those Syrians, refugees, and then of course the Paris attacks, and then in Lebanon also the bombs there, and ISIS has now purportedly released pictures of the bomb. It says that they destroyed that Russian plane. I mean, there is so much happening with the Islamic State.
Well, perhaps I can give you a little bit of good news,
yes,
if there is good news. I think that the reason that we've seen this surge of terrorism from ISIS out of the region is that ISIS is starting to feel threatened in the region.
In the region that they are now controls?
In Syria, in Iraq, we, the U.S., Russia, France increasingly has been attacking them from the air. They have not been able to expand their territory. We have been destroying some of their economic sources, their oil fields, their oil tankers, which is how they get a big part of the way they get money. And so I think it's because they're feeling threatened in their territory that they're lashing out around the world. So it's not good news if you're the victim of the terrorism, but it does show a little bit that ISIS may be on the run. But it's going to take a long time to contain and then destroy ISIS.
In the last minute, 30 seconds that we have left here, any final words on this, and perhaps something that can relate to us here? Should we worry in the U.S.?
Well,
big question.
The good news, again, from our perspective, is that there are probably fewer ISIS infiltrators in the U.S. than there are in Lebanon, in Western Europe, in a place like France. So that's the good news. The bad news is there probably are some. There probably are some. We can call them sleeper cells at this point. And so that's why our intelligence agencies, our police forces really need to be very, very vigilant about any sort of signs of this. And the general public has to be as well. You know, if you see something, say something. It's a cliche, but it's true, and it could save lives. And then we have the question of the refugees. And the vast majority of these refugees are not ISIS. They are victims themselves, including victims of ISIS, and that's why they're fleeing, a lot of them. On the other hand, I would not be surprised if a few of them are ISIS. Or ISIS sympathizers. And so we're going to have to be very, very careful on the vetting of those refugees.
Well, we'll see what happens in the next weeks, perhaps months, years to come. And Dr. Alan Kuperman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks very much for having me.